She's been passed around and picked on, and her body shows.
The world of country music is filled with heartfelt lyrics and timeless melodies. But behind the scenes, conflicts between legendary artists have impacted not only their lives, but also their songs. These clashes have sparked unforgettable stories that reveal what happens when passion and ambition collide. Join us as we unravel some of the feuds that shaped country music forever. The Family Feud, Alabama, and the Kentucky Headhunters. The story of Alabama and the Kentucky Headhunters is more than just a tale of musical competition. Born out of the same southern soil, their rivalry began long before they set foot on stages or earned spots on the charts. Decades before their names became synonymous with southern rock country, the cousins who would form these legendary groups shared something more intimate than music. Family reunions in the 1960s often turned into impromptu jam sessions. The Cook cousins from Glasgow, Kentucky, and the Young cousins from Fort Payne, Alabama, swapped guitars and harmonies in barns and backyard gatherings. What seemed like playful experimentation would later erupt into one of country music's most intense rivalries. These two groups, tied by family and fate, eventually redefined country music. In 1965, Randy Young, the elder figure of the family's musical brood, introduced his younger cousin Richard Cook to the basics of guitar. The pair bonded over dreams of performing on the Grand Ole Opry stage. However, their paths soon diverged. Randy teamed up with his cousins Teddy and Jeff to form Alabama, a group that would polish their sound, blending country with accessible pop hooks. Meanwhile, Richard joined forces with his brother Greg to create the Kentucky Headhunters, a raw southern rock band with grit. The early years set the tone for their opposing roots. Alabama, with its radio-ready sound, quickly caught the attention of Nashville's industry heavyweights. The Headhunters, however, leaned into their rough edges, playing rural venues where dirt floors and loud crowds were the norm. While both bands claimed to represent real country music, their definitions couldn't have been more different. In 1980, Alabama got their first major breakthrough with Tennessee River, a chart-topping hit that announced their arrival on the national stage. The Headhunters, still grinding away in small-town bars, sent a demo tape to Randy, hoping for encouragement. Instead, Randy suggested toning down their signature guitar work to appeal to broader audiences. Richard, offended by the implication, used that rejection as fuel. The Headhunters released Do Ma Walker, a defiant anthem that celebrated their unfiltered southern roots. The song's success proved there was an appetite for raw, rebellious country rock. Alabama responded with mountain music, which blended rock elements into their polished sound, signaling their refusal to be outdone. As the rivalry intensified, family gatherings became battlefields. Thanksgiving in 1985 became infamous when Greg Cook and Jeff Cook clashed over electric guitar tones during what should have been a casual jam session. The argument escalated so dramatically that their grandmother banned music at future holiday events, and the ban remained in effect for nearly 2 decades. The competition between the two bands wasn't just a personal grudge. It reshaped the southern rock country landscape. Alabama, accused by the Headhunters of abandoning their roots for commercial success, began experimenting with harder rock elements to reclaim their edge. Meanwhile, the Headhunters refined their harmonies to prove they weren't just gritty rebels, but also skilled musicians. Nashville executives exploited the rivalry, marketing both bands as pioneers of a new hybrid sound that blended tradition with innovation. In 1991, the tension between them came to a head at the CMA Awards, where both bands performed back-to-back. Kentucky Headhunters played their Grammy-winning The Ballad of Davy Crockett, a raw, foot-stomping tribute to Southern storytelling. Meanwhile, Alabama countered with a supercharged rendition of Born Country, showcasing their ability to balance authenticity with mainstream appeal. Critics and fans alike debated the performances, reigniting conversations about the future of country music. However, the rivalry wasn't confined to the stage. In 1987, at the Summer NAMM show, both bands unveiled signature guitar lines in a symbolic showdown. Alabama's Cook cousins partnered with Gibson, emphasizing their commitment to Southern rock tradition, while the Headhunters chose Morris guitars, signaling their push for innovation within country pop. The feud even divided Nashville's famed session musicians. The A-Team Pickers, once a unified group, split their allegiances, forcing both bands to assemble dedicated backing teams. Their musical duels extended to their set lists. When Alabama performed mountain music at the CMA Festival, the Headhunters answered with "My Daddy Was a Milkman," a track that took veiled shots at the slick, polished sound dominating country radio. Each song became a strategic move in a game of musical chess, with journalists and fans analyzing lyrics and arrangements for hidden barbs. Nevertheless, efforts were made to mend the fractured family bonds. At a Christmas gathering in 1989, their grandmother insisted on reconciliation before dinner. The resulting jam session produced 3 informal recordings that captured a surprising harmony between the two groups. Though never officially released, these tapes circulated among fans, offering a rare glimpse of unity in between the rivalry. Radio programmers capitalized on the drama, introducing Battle of the Bands segments where listeners could vote between Alabama's and the Headhunters' versions of classic country standards. These battles boosted ratings and sales for both bands, showing that their competition was as commercially lucrative as it was creatively stimulating. And by 1992, their rivalry had revolutionized the industry. Together, they forged 27 charting singles, 4 groundbreaking recording techniques, and a new blueprint for marketing family bands. Record labels began emphasizing familial ties in their promotions, even conducting DNA tests to verify the authenticity of blood relations. The trend extended to acts like the Bellamy brothers and the Gatlin brothers, who highlighted their sibling bonds to capitalize on the trend. The feud also changed how Nashville approached recording. These contrasting approaches left a lasting legacy, influencing how family acts recorded their music for decades. Despite their differences, Alabama and the Headhunters ultimately proved two sides of the same coin. Whether polished or raw, what mattered most was the honesty behind the music. How about the split that birthed one of the best-selling tracks of all times? Porter Wagoner and Dolly Parton's breakup. In 1967, Porter Wagoner's life changed when he spotted Dolly Parton performing on the CA's Walker Show. Her crystalline voice pierced the static of his black and white television, capturing his attention. At the time, Porter was not just any country artist. His Porter Wagoner Show reached an incredible 45 million viewers weekly, making him one of the most influential figures in country music. With his longtime duet partner Norma Jean departing, Porter was desperate to find a replacement. Dolly, barely 20 and brimming with raw talent, seemed like the perfect fit. She was gifted enough to captivate audiences, yet inexperienced enough for him to mold into his vision. Their partnership became transformative for the show. While angry letters poured in from fans lamenting Norma Jean's departure, Dolly quickly won over the audience. Her charm, paired with Porter's polished persona, created a magnetic on-screen dynamic. Their first duet, "The Last Thing on My Mind," climbed to number 7 on the country charts, and each subsequent release soared even higher. However, tension brewed behind the scenes. Porter was notorious for his controlling nature, managing every detail of their act with an iron grip. He approved every song they performed, dictated their stage positions, and even signed off on Dolly's hairstyles. His controlling tendencies extended to the creative process as well. The show's musical director later revealed that Porter rejected at least a dozen songs because they emphasized Dolly's voice over his. Rather than stifle her, these restrictions ignited Dolly's creativity. She began writing prolifically in secret, filling notebooks with songs she couldn't yet record. As time passed, the power dynamics in their partnership began to shift. Initially, fan mail poured in equally for both stars, but before long, Dolly was receiving more letters than Porter. Photographers requested solo shots of her, and radio stations requested separate interviews. Porter, sensing his grip slipping, retaliated by cutting her solo segments from 45 minutes to 30, then to a mere 15. Each slight inspired more songs, composed in stolen moments during late-night bus rides or hotel stays. Their first significant clash erupted over "Coat of Many Colors," a deeply personal song Dolly wrote about her childhood. Porter insisted it should be recorded as a duet, but for the first time, Dolly stood her ground, refusing to share the track. This decision marked a turning point in their relationship as the song went on to reach number 4 on the charts, becoming her most successful solo release to date. Enraged, Porter began sabotaging her career, scheduling duo performances during her solo gigs, and forcing her to choose between the exposure he provided and her growing independence. In 1973, during a commercial break, the final crack in their professional relationship appeared when Dolly absent-mindedly hummed a melody for a new song she was working on titled Jolene. Porter overheard and quickly realized the song wasn't intended for their act. For years, they'd operated under an unspoken rule. Her best material belonged to their partnership. This prompted Dolly to come to the decision that she was ready to go out on her own and make her own career. Unfortunately, Porter wasn't ready to see her go, and they were butting heads over the decision. There was a lot of disappointment and heartache, and Porter just wasn't listening to her reason for leaving. So Dolly went home and turned to what she knew best. She penned, "I Will Always Love You," not just as a farewell to Porter, but as the expression of how much she cared about and appreciated him. The song became a chart-topping hit, and decades later, Whitney Houston's version would transform it into one of the best-selling singles of all time. 5 years later, Porter sued Dolly for $3 million, accusing her of breaching their contract, causing financial losses, and inflicting emotional distress. His lawyers went further, claiming writing credits for her solo work on the grounds that Porter's mentorship had shaped her style. The 47-page lawsuit detailed every song he believed he'd influenced. The legal dispute turned Nashville into a battlefield, dividing the country music community. Traditionalists rallied behind Porter, seeing him as a guardian of old-school values, while rising stars sided with Dolly, recognizing echoes of their own struggles for independence. As the feud escalated, Porter began claiming ownership of Dolly's unreleased material. Their courtroom appearances became inspiration for new songs, with both artists turning their legal strife into hits. Ironically, the very conflict that had torn them apart resulted in more platinum records than their partnership ever had. Well beyond their personal drama, the dispute left a lasting impact on the music industry. Publishers rewrote contracts to clearly define the boundaries of mentor-artist relationships, ensuring that protégés retained greater control over their work. The Grand Ole Opry implemented formal procedures to mediate disputes, and record labels revamped their artist development programs. Female artists in particular benefited from the changes. The feud between Dolly Parton and Porter Wagoner was more than just a clash of egos. It reshaped country music's power structures. Although the lawsuit was later settled out of court, Dolly's triumph served as a beacon for artists navigating the fine line between gratitude and independence, proving that creative freedom was worth fighting for. Speaking of women gaining control, these next two women proved that carving out an identity was a priority. Loretta Lynn versus Tammy Wynette. In the late 1960s, two titans of country music, Loretta Lynn and Tammy Wynette, found themselves on opposing sides of a cultural and musical divide that would reshape the genre forever. Their rivalry wasn't merely about hit records, it reflected deeper tensions about the roles of women in society, country music's evolving identity, and the power struggles that defined Nashville's music scene. Tammy Wynette, the self-proclaimed First Lady of country music, embodied elegance and glamour. Draped in diamonds and rhinestones, she represented a polished ideal of Southern womanhood. Loretta Lynn, by contrast, embraced a down-to-earth persona, with her pearls and gingham dresses symbolizing her working-class roots. Tammy's producer, Billy Sherrill, was the mastermind behind her lush sound, while Loretta teamed with her husband, Doolittle Lynn, who often doubled as her manager. Their differing approaches to female empowerment highlighted their rivalry. Tammy championed the idea of graceful endurance, urging women to stand by their men despite hardships, while Loretta preached confrontation, tackling taboo topics like birth control and double standards in her music. Nashville executives quickly saw the marketing potential in their contrasts. Tammy was positioned as the sophisticated Southern lady, making appearances on mainstream television shows and crossing over into pop markets. Meanwhile, Loretta became the coal miner's daughter, performing at county fairs and honky-tonks, a living proof of country authenticity. Both women chafed under these narratives. Often labeled the heartbreaker, Tammy had a sharp business acumen that rivaled any male executive in Nashville. Loretta, known as the homemaker, wrote incredible songs like The Pill and Rated X, and maintained a traditional marriage. Their contradictions reflected the broader changes occurring for women in country music and beyond, where expectations of submission clashed with a growing desire for independence. Their rivalry extended into fashion, which became their first battlefield. Tammy's rhinestones and designer gowns, symbolized country music's shift toward glitz and glamour, while Loretta's cowboy boots and gingham dresses championed authenticity. Department stores capitalized on this competition, launching competing clothing lines. Their styles divided fans and marked a clear line between aspiration and accessibility in country fashion. When Conway Twitty entered the picture, the rivalry turned personal. His duets with Loretta, such as Louisiana Woman, Mississippi Man, dominated the charts, stirring rumors about their off-stage relationship. Meanwhile, Tammy, whose private life was already used for gossip, was said to harbor jealousy over Conway's decision to prioritize his professional partnership with Loretta over collaborating with her. Even their recording techniques reflected their diverging philosophies. With Cheryl at the helm, Tammy pioneered layered arrangements that pushed country music toward a more sophisticated, pop-influenced sound. Loretta, always the traditionalist, recorded with her road band to maintain the rawness of her live performances. These contrasting styles forced Nashville studios to begin accommodating both polished productions and gritty authenticity. Radio stations, caught in the middle, faced mounting pressure. Tammy's songs appealed to urban audiences new to country music, while Loretta resonated with rural listeners who saw their lives mirrored in her lyrics. The resulting split led to the first demographic targeting in country radio, birthing format specialization that still exists today. Their songwriting choices unveiled even deeper divides. Tammy's Stand By Your Man became a cultural anthem for traditional values, while Loretta's The Pill boldly addressed women's reproductive rights. When Tammy released Divorce, Loretta countered with Rated X, staking her claim in the debate over women's roles. Female listeners chose sides, transforming their music preferences into political statements. The conflict didn't just reflect societal tensions, it drove change within Nashville. Publishers began accepting songs about women's experiences beyond their relationships. Record labels hired female executives to better understand their audience, and concert promoters realized women could headline tours without male support acts. The 1973 CMA Awards epitomized their distinctive styles. Tammy performed with a 30-piece orchestra, her voice rising over lush string arrangements. Loretta, on the other hand, took the stage with just her band, delivering a raw and unfiltered rendition of Coal Miner's Daughter. This stark contrast forced the industry to recognize both approaches as commercially viable, leading to divided marketing budgets for female artists. However, behind the scenes, their demands reshaped the business. Tammy insisted on approval rights for promotional photos, setting a precedent for image control. Loretta fought for song selection authority, establishing creative rights for female artists. These victories became standard contract elements for women in country music, granting them agency over their careers. Even Nashville's technical landscape evolved under their influence. Tammy's producer, Cheryl, pioneered layered recording techniques, creating lush soundscapes that defined her music. Loretta's collaboration with Owen Bradley, by contrast, emphasized live-in studio recordings that captured emotional authenticity. Modern Nashville studios still draw on these methods, known commonly as Wynette Polish and Lynn Raw. Together, Loretta Lynn and Tammy Wynette redefined the possibilities for women in country music. Their rivalry was not just about who topped the charts, it was a struggle over identity, agency, and the future of the genre. By challenging each other, they expanded the boundaries of country music, leaving a legacy that continues to resonate today. Let's talk about one of the feuds that shaped the outlaw country music category: the dispute between Chet Atkins and Waylon Jennings. At the center of the 1970s clash for the very essence of country music were two icons: Chet Atkins, the architect of the smooth commercial Nashville sound, and Waylon Jennings, the outlaw determined to preserve country's raw, untamed spirit. Their feud wasn't just about music. It was a struggle for authenticity, creative freedom, and the soul of an industry on the brink of transformation. Chet Atkins had spent decades perfecting his vision of country music, one that could compete with the polished appeal of pop. As RCA Records' head producer, he introduced rich string arrangements, backing choirs, and immaculate production techniques that softened the grit of traditional country. And his formula worked. Country music surged onto mainstream radio. its records climbing pop charts. But for Waylon Jennings, this glossy sound wasn't progress, it was betrayal. Every orchestral swell, every pristine harmony, felt like a layer of varnish concealing the genre's authenticity. He believed country music's soul was being stripped away, one instrument at a time. The tension between these two titans erupted during the recording of Waylon's album, Dreaming My Dreams. Atkins wanted the drums subdued, their impact softened with brushes to fit RCA's signature style. Waylon, however, demanded stick hits with a raw punch that defied the formula. Their clash came to a head when Atkins, during a lunch break, attempted to sneak string arrangements into a track. Furious, Waylon stormed into the studio and destroyed the tape machine in a fit of defiance. The equipment damage cost $15,000, but for Waylon, the act was priceless, a declaration of war against conformity. From that moment on, their creative differences turned Nashville studios into arenas of innovation and rebellion. Atkins, ever the perfectionist, scheduled daytime sessions with his trusted A-team of session musicians. Together, they produced flawless tracks with carefully balanced dynamics. Waylon, on the other hand, took the night shift. He brought his own band, cranked up the amplifiers, and pushed every soundboard to its limit. The energy in his sessions was electric, chaotic, and unapologetically authentic. The technical arms race between the two men pushed the boundaries of studio recording. Atkins, always seeking refinement, introduced mid-side microphone techniques to create expansive stereo imaging. In response, Waylon leaned into the imperfections, running tracks through overdriven Ampex tape machines to achieve a raw, naturally compressed sound. Their rivalry forced manufacturers to innovate. The effect of the feud spread across the industry. Willie Nelson, inspired by Waylon's defiance, negotiated full creative control at Columbia Records, setting a new precedent for artists. Tom Paul Glazer founded Hillbilly Central, a studio that abandoned polished production in favor of unfiltered live energy. Contracts began including the Waylon Clause, giving artists the final say over their mixes. The Nashville music scene, once tightly controlled, fractured into factions, those who followed Atkins' polished approach and those who embraced Waylon's raw rebellion. Studio musicians were forced to choose sides. Traditionalists aligned with Atkins, reading charts and delivering note-perfect performances. Meanwhile, the outlaws, playing by feel and instinct, gravitated toward Waylon. The divide between these two worlds extended to radio. Atkins's productions found their home in daytime playlists, providing an easy, polished backdrop for office workers and shoppers. Waylon's rough-edged sound, however, resonated with younger audiences. His tracks dominated late-night slots, pulling in listeners who craved unfiltered country music. The split in airplay gave rise to distinct audiences, each with its own set of expectations. By 1976, the conflict had reached its cultural peak at the CMA Awards. Atkins orchestrated a tribute to the Nashville sound, complete with a 40-piece orchestra that outlined the genre's polished sophistication. Waylon replied with a blistering performance of "Are You Sure Hank Done It This Way?" backed by nothing but his band and amplified to near-deafening levels. The comparison was clear. Even record stores began adapting to the schism. Country sections were reorganized, with Nashville sound albums shelved separately from the emerging outlaw country category. Marketing departments followed suit. Atkins's artists appeared in soft-focus portraits framed by elegant serif fonts, while Waylon's camp adopted sharp, black-and-white imagery with bold, rebellious typography. The legacy of their feud reshaped country music. Atkins proved that sophistication could elevate the genre to mainstream success, while Waylon demonstrated that authenticity had just as much, if not more, commercial power. What began as a clash between two icons transformed Nashville forever, leaving behind a legacy that echoes in every note recorded in Music City. The social media effect. Nashville's unwritten rule of keeping disputes private once defined the country music industry. Feuds were discreet, confined to subtle jabs in lyrics or behind-the-scenes maneuvering. But the rise of social media obliterated this long-standing code, thrusting conflicts into the digital spotlight where they became spectacles as captivating as the music itself. In this new landscape, careers could soar or crumble with just a single post. The rivalry between Jason Aldean and Eric Church in 2012 epitomized the shift. Their spat wasn't just a clash of personalities, but a broader debate over authenticity in modern country music. Church publicly criticized mainstream artists, labeling them product pushers, a veiled jab at Aldean and others. Aldean fired back by pointing out Church's own commercial endorsements, exposing what he saw as hypocrisy. What might have been a quiet industry quarrel instead unfolded on Twitter in full view of fans. The fallout was dramatic, not in lost reputations but in streaming spikes. As their feud gained traction, streaming platforms reported dramatic increases in their music's performance, revealing an unexpected truth. Online drama could be more lucrative than airplay. This phenomenon was far from isolated. When Zac Brown dismissed Luke Bryan's "That's My Kind of Night" as the worst song ever, the two engaged in a 3-month Twitter war over country music's direction. The result? Both artists saw their streaming numbers skyrocket. Meanwhile, industry insiders quickly took notice of this. Radio stations began using social media metrics to determine airplay, while social media managers coached stars on tailoring content to each platform. Twitter demanded sharp, witty comebacks. Instagram required striking visuals. TikTok thrived on quirky, meme-worthy moments. Feuds became not just battles of ideology, but orchestrated marketing strategies. The explosion of social media-driven drama didn't just affect artists' personal brands, it reshaped their careers. Florida Georgia Line's Tyler Hubbard and Brian Kelly demonstrated this when Hubbard unfollowed Kelly over political differences. Fans immediately noticed, and speculation spread like wildfire. The resulting publicity outshone even their chart-topping hits. Feuds also unlocked unexpected revenue streams. When Maren Morris and Brittany Aldean clashed over transgender rights, the fallout was as profitable as it was polarizing. Both sides launched merchandise lines, while hashtags, tribute songs, and curated playlists fueled the fire. Conflict wasn't just content, it was commerce, with digital platforms turning every barb into a monetized moment. Fans, too, evolved. Once content to join traditional fan clubs, they transformed into highly organized digital armies. Armed with hashtags and coordinated posting strategies, they could amplify an artist's message or drown it out. Morgan Wallen's controversy exemplified this power shift. Despite industry backlash, his fan base mobilized on streaming platforms, creating playlists and boosting his numbers in defiance of radio bans. The ripple effects extended to the touring circuit. Promoters now monitored social media sentiment to predict ticket sales. Artists embroiled in public conflicts often saw their tour revenues surge in the short term, though not without complications. The brothers, Osborne for instance, found that their progressive stances boosted ticket sales in coastal cities, while alienating audiences in conservative heartland regions. The digital age made these dynamics instantly measurable, leaving artists and labels to weigh the costs of taking a stand. Streaming platforms further complicated matters by favoring controversy in their algorithms. Playlists often paired feuding artists, turning division into engagement. When Casey Musgraves openly criticized conservative country artists, streaming services created playlists, comparing her songs with those of her rivals. Suddenly, the quality of the music took a back seat to the drama surrounding it. Traditional Nashville publicity methods struggled to keep up. Younger artists hired savvy social media teams to craft their digital personas, while older stars faced the challenge of staying relevant. George Strait's carefully crafted press release about modern country was quickly overshadowed by Kane Brown's viral TikTok response, demonstrating the shifting power dynamic. The physical geography of Music Row lost significance as digital platforms became the primary arena for industry battles. Social media also leveled the playing field, giving independent artists a chance to challenge established stars. Walker Hayes, for example, used Twitter to ignite debates about traditional country music, leveraging viral moments to propel his career faster than years of networking ever could. Award shows, once the height of industry drama, lost their touch. Social media feuds stole the spotlight, while producers began positioning cameras to capture digital-friendly reaction shots rather than focusing solely on performances. In this era, the line between music and marketing has blurred. Feuds are no longer mere clashes of opinion. They're engines of engagement, shaping careers, fueling debates, and redefining country music in ways Nashville's old guard never could have anticipated. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.